Number 4 is one of those cases where, although it says, use quadratic formula to solve these, many students, in fact, pretty much all students, because I haven't really told you about it, when you go to do your A, automatically it says quadratic formula, so you go to your A equal 3, B equal 9, and C is going to equal -6. If you look at those, there's a common term with all these numbers. Isn't there? Yeah, 3, right? If you were to factor out that 3 first, so we would have r squared plus 3r minus 2 equals 0. You're going to save yourself some simplifying in the end. I factored out a 3 from every term. Okay? 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now, even at times, I don't, that first step in that flowchart thing, which I'm going to make more copies. I got copies somewhere. It says factor out any common terms. Especially when I'm using the quadratic formula, I skip that part. And I don't even teach it because it really rarely comes up in problems. But if it does, and you happen to notice it, go ahead and take that factor out. Okay? Because when you go to divide both sides by 3, this 3 is just like a slope factor. Okay? A slope constant. And this one, your A will equal 1, your B will equal 3, and your C will equal -2. See how that we took out a factor of 3 from each one of those? That way, when you get to the end of the problem, you won't have to simplify your answer. Okay. But let's go ahead and do it as if we didn't notice that 3, okay? Factor it out. So my A equals 3, my B equals 9, my C equals -6, and I'm going to plug it into our quadratic formula, right? So x equals -b, so -b, my b is 9, plus or minus, the square root of.
Wait, I thought you were going to use the reduced term.
No, I'm going to use the not reduced ones because I want to show you how to reduce it at the end of the problem. Okay. If you're lucky enough to notice you can factor out a 3, then go ahead and do it. Okay, because it's going to be easy. But we'll do it at the end instead of the beginning. Okay. So plus or minus b squared. So I have my b, which is 9 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is -6, all divided by 2 times a, which is 3. Okay. Now, yesterday I learned that you guys were taught to that you were taught to put this in a calculator without the square root, right? To make your lives easier. So let's do that. Let's see, I have 9 squared. I don't need to put it in parentheses because it's not a -9. So I have 9 squared minus 4 times 3.
Are we supposed to put parentheses around the 2 and then square it? Not the 2. Number 9?
If it was a -9, I would have to.
Oh,
Okay? Because it's a positive, I didn't. If you want to just get in the habit of always doing it, it's always a good idea. Okay? If you want to, by all means, go ahead and put parentheses. Like I said, it's a good habit to do it. Sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't. It's like me writing. Sometimes I'll print and then sometimes I'll use cursive. Okay. If it's negative, you always have to use parentheses. So it's just a good habit to do it. It's a bad habit of mine to do it sometimes and not others.
I just do it all the time.
Yeah. And times -6. I should just do it all the time. Bad me. And I get 153. So I'm going to rewrite this. Okay, so this equals, let's see that -9, I can drop these parentheses. -9 plus or minus the square root of 153. Ooh, 153, oh no, it's not a prime number. All divided by 6. Okay, now I have to simplify the square root of 153. And this is where it would have been a whole lot easier taking out that 3, because now I've got a big mess to simplify. But we can do it because we know how. So 153, I'm going to take 153 divided by 2. So 153 divided by 2, I got 76.5. So I've got my list of perfect squares, right? And I'm going to start dividing 153 by the next smallest number that's a perfect square under 76. So that would be 64, right? So I'm going to take 153 divided by 64, and I get a decimal, so 64 is not a factor. Let's see, 5 squared is 25, so now I'm going to try 25. I know it's not going to work. 53 divided by 25, so decimal. So that was 5 squared, so 4 squared is 16, so I'm going to take 153 divided by 16, get 9, so that's not going to work. And then I'm going to take, 16 was 4 squared, so I need 3 squared, which is 9. So I'm going to take 153 divided by 9, and I get 17. So 9 is a factor of 153. So I'm going to change this to -9 plus or minus the square root of 9 times the square root of 17
Square root of 9
is 3. Good. So I'm going to keep reducing. -9 plus or minus 3 square root of 17 all divided by 6. Now, still not done, right? Because if you look at the answer, it's a different answer in the back. I can still simplify. Okay. I thought there was. Oh, no, that was the other sheet. Okay. All right, I'll have to put an answer key in. All right, so this really means I have -9 divided by 6 plus or minus 3 square root of 17 divided by 6. Okay, I'm just splitting up my fractions. I can reduce this. 9/6 I can reduce to 3/2 plus or minus 3 goes into 6 twice. I can reduce this. 3 goes into 3 once. I got the square root of 17 over 2. And that's what the answer is, my final answer. It's reduced. And if you want to combine it all under one fraction, I have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 17 all over 2. Okay? Either one of these will work. Yeah, this is really difficult. If we would have taken out that 3 to begin with, want to see how easy it is? It's a whole lot easier than this mess. Let's do it. So, if I would have taken out that 3 to begin with and used 1, 3, and 2 for my A, B, and C, my x equals negative b, which is negative 3 plus or minus square root of b squared, 3 squared minus 4, a is 1, c is negative 2, all over 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, let's do underneath the radical. Let's see, 3 squared. 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 2. And I get 17. So this becomes x equals negative 3 plus or minus square root of 17 divided by 2. So which one's easier? Yeah, if I would have taken out that factor of 3 before I put it into the quadratic formula. This is a huge mess. It can be done, but it's a mess. So when you have a quadratic, please look for that common term. And Kalina, that's why you had that huge problem in number 16. I miss it myself a lot of times. A lot of times. I miss that common term. Okay. So now you only have 4 to do on this page, right? All right, so let's go back to that review we were talking about. Solving quadratics. And let's talk a little bit about that 16, which I was talking to Michaelina about. Take out that 2. Number 16. Okay, you could take out a factor of 2, common term. Then use your A, B, and C, and it'll be a whole lot easier than trying to reduce it at the end. I'd rather let's do a, there was a really good one that Mr. Dredge did here. Oh, number 17. Oh, yeah. You guys missed a real treat last hour. If you never had Dredge teach, you missed a whole lot because he's really an awesome teacher. Anyway, he actually came in here and taught this problem. So we're supposed to do this solved by the quadratic formula. Now remember, the quadratic formula works for every quadratic equation, right? If you ever have the opportunity to use other methods are easier than the quadratic formula. As Mr. Dredge put it, use the quadratic formula as your last resort. Okay, yes, it works for every problem, but I'm going to do this both ways. I'm going to do this 2 ways, and you're going to see the difference. All right? So the first, it told us to use a quadratic formula, so we have to use a quadratic formula. Unfortunately, there's an easier way, but anyway, we need a 0 on one side for the quadratic formula, right? So I'm going to have to subtract 7 from both sides. So I get, let's see, I get b squared minus 3 equals 0. So I got my 0, right? So what's my a? 1. Good. What's my b?
0.
Good. Because there's a 0x to the first there for the term, right? It's not there, so it has to be multiplied by 0. And my c? Negative 3, right? Okay. So let's put that in our formula. So x equals negative b, negative 0, which really doesn't matter, right? Plus, unless you get into calculus, then it does matter. Plus or minus square root of b0 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 3, all over 2 times a, which is 1. Okay. Now I could use the calculator to find out the number under the radical, but this one's pretty easy to do, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so this equals, zeros I'm just going to leave out. So I got my plus or minus. Okay, we have negative 4 times negative 3, which is positive 12, right? All divided by 2.
So, is that not a negative 12?
Nope, because I'm multiplying. Well, if you want to look at it this way, 4 times negative 3 is negative 12, but don't forget that minus sign. So it makes it a positive 12. But then I have to reduce my radical, right? So I have plus or minus, and I'm going to make this radical 4 times radical 3, all divided by 2. So I have plus or minus, the square root of 4 is 2, square root of 3, all divided by 2. And what happens to the 2's? Yeah, they can cancel out because I only have one term on each, right? One on the numerator and one term in the denominator. So my answer is?
Plus or minus square root.
Yep. Now that seemed like, for such a simple problem, seemed like a lot of work, didn't it? Quadratic formula, it works. It works for every quadratic equation. But if we had a choice, this would have been a really good problem for which method, guys?
Taking the root.
Square root of both sides, right? So let's do square root of both sides and see the difference. So I have b squared plus 4 equals 7. Okay, remember, we have to get the b squared by itself, so I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So I end up with b squared equals 3. Now what? Square root of both sides. And my answer?
Plus or minus negative square root of 3.
Which one's easier?
The blue one.
Yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, in the instructions we must use the quadratic formula, but sure would have been a lot easier if we had that, if we could have been able to use the square rooting. Okay. Always works, but I like that saying, as a last resort. Should we do speaking of completing the square, should we do a completing the square, then call it a day? So that was method 4, quadratic formula. We use method 2, taking the square roots. Let's do a method 3 one. Okay, completing the square. Okay. Anyone in particular? Or you guys? Let's just do number 12 here. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Okay, so the form, we're in standard form, right? So the first thing we have to do in order to complete the square, in that little process box on the note sheet, have to make sure that we have a 1 for the squared term, which we do. Then we have to put it in the form, must be in the form, where I have my ax squared plus bx equal to c, the constant. So I have to move this c to the other side. So I'm going to add 65, right? To both sides. So here's my form in the ax squared plus bx. So I have a squared plus 12a, and then that equals negative 6 plus 65 is going to be 59. Then I have to add a perfect square. And the way I find that perfect square is I take my b, I divide it by 2, and then I square it. So I'm going to take my b, which is 12. Now I'm going to be adding this to each side, right? So I'm going to take my b, which is 12, positive 12, divide it by 2, and I'm going to square it. So I have 12 divided by 2 is 6. I'm going to square it, which is 36. I'm going to add 36 to both sides. Okay, that made my perfect square trinomial, which we'll factor to as perfect square binomial. I have my a. This is a positive 6 squared. I'm sorry? Huh?
I was a step ahead.
Okay. And then be careful. When I'm doing things quick, I'll forget to. I'll just put that 36 there. But this is what we need. All right. We need 59 plus 36, which is 95. Square root both sides. Get rid of that power of 2. Now I can drop my parentheses. A plus 6 equals plus or minus square root of 95. And then subtract 6 from both sides. Negative 6 plus or minus square root of 95. And I have to check, at least do a mental check to see if 95, if there's a perfect square factor of 95. Let's see, I've got 9, nope. 4, nope. 4 squared is 16, no. 5 squared is 25, that's not going to work. 6 squared, 36, nope. 7 squared is 49, that's not going to work. 8 squared is 64, not going to work, and that's it. Okay. Or, in other words, what you guys are going to have to do probably is start that whole 95, divide by 2. It's going to give me 42.5. So you would start with 95 divided by 36. Nope. 95 divided by 25. You know that's not going to work. 95 divided by 16. Nope. 95. Let's see. 3 squared is 9. Divided by 9. Nope. And 2 squared is 4. You know that's not going to work. So, therefore, I know that 95 does not have a factor of a perfect square. Isn't that fun? I do not see the enthusiasm on your...
Can we do 18 on the new one that we discussed?
Which one?
18 on the new one.
15 on the quiz review. Tuesday's quiz review. Tuesday's quiz review. Am I mean by putting a quiz on Tuesday? Oh, completing the square. Ooh, that's fun. That's Mr. Dredge's favorite one.
I meant 18 the quadratic formula.
Yuck. Okay, so 18. We have to use quadratic formula. I cannot take out any common terms. I have a 0 there, so I'm going to go ahead and perform my operation. Feel like just call me Dr. D. Okay, my A is 1. My B is negative 11. And my C, oh, nice numbers, negative 126. Okay, plug her in. X equals negative B, which is negative 11, plus or minus the square root of B squared, so negative 11 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is negative 126, all over 2 times A, which is 1. Okay, I'm going to put what's underneath the radical sign of my calculator. So I have parentheses, negative 11 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 126. And I get 625. Ooh, lucky me. See, X equals negative 11 is a positive 11. Plus or minus square root of 625 all over 2. And just for the heck of it, unfortunately, I know that 625 is a perfect square, but you guys should check regardless. Hey, let's take the square root of 625. Let's see if that's a perfect square. And it is. It's 25. X equals 11 plus or minus 25, all divided by 2. That symbol gives me two problems, right? So I have 11 plus 25, all divided by 2. 11 plus 25 is 36 divided by 2. 36 divided by 2 is 18. Okay, my second problem. 11 minus 25 divided by 2. See, that gives me negative 14 divided by 2, which is negative 7. That worked out pretty nice, actually. So x equals negative 7 comma 18. Any others? I'm going to go through on Monday. I'm going to do like the odds or something on the review, okay? If I were you guys, I'd spend a little time this weekend doing some of these problems, and because it just takes practice on these. All right? Aid, you got a question or you just need a little help?
Need help, luckily
Okay.
after school.
There is no after school.
I can't. I just can't do it after school.
Do you know anyone else that can help me after school? This tour?
You can get it done to next week.
Yeah, we could do it next week. I'll stay after next week. I'm sure I'll feel much better Monday.